So again, welcome everybody. It's Friday. It's the temple. It's the Buddha Center. It's good to see everybody. I hope everybody is staying well and staying safe. So let's get started like we normally do. Short period of bell meditation. Wherever you are behind your avatar, please get into a nice meditation posture. And just a reminder, your avatar gains nothing from meditation. It can sit here all day long. Only that person behind the avatar does. Chances are you're going to get distracted. When it happens, just gently remind yourself and go back to focusing on the sound of the bell. And the idea of the bell is to get some concentration going, get that deep listening going, so we can all absorb some Dharma today. All right, give you a moment, get into a nice posture. We'll begin at the sound of the bell. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the teaching. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the taught. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I have taken refuge in the Buddha. I have taken refuge in the Dharma. I have taken refuge in the Sangha. 3 pure precepts. Cease to do harm. Do only good. Do good for others. Bodhisattva vow. However innumerable all beings are, I vow to lead them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Swaha. All right, so here we are, Friday, the temple. So today we're going to talk about the art of living. which is something that I think we all need a little lesson in the current times that we're having. And it centers around four things. It centers around pessimism, optimism, realism, and workism. So, four different terms here. And actually, this comes, recently I reread The Art of Living, Vipassana meditation as taught by S.N. Goenka. The author was William Hart, or the guy that put it together. S.N. Goenka, very famous Vipassana meditation teacher, very famous Buddhist scholar, really well known. And while I was reading it, as some of you know, I really like parables, right? And I was struck in this particular book, The Art of Living, about the variety of parables that Master Goenka uses to teach what he calls the art of living. Now, the book does offer the process of how Vipassana meditation is taught. And that's a very important thing. Vipassana meditation is a very effective technique. But more importantly in this book, at least for me, in my experience, his words just clearly revealed the core of how to be a Buddhist in each moment. Again, that's something we can all use right now. So the particular parable I'm going to use today has to do with how you choose to respond to unique situations that you're certain you're going to encounter during your lifetime. Again, look what we're going through right now. So between birth and death, we encounter stuff like this. And we have choices, like we always have choices. We can choose pessimism, optimism, realism, or workism, or maybe even a combination of some. So I'm going to start out with the parable. It's called Filling the Bottle of Oil. And again, this is S.N. Goenka, his parable. Excuse me. A mother sent her son with an empty bottle and a 10-rupee note to buy some oil from the nearby grocer's shop. The boy went, and he had the bottle filled, but as he was returning, he fell down, dropped it. And before he could pick it up, half the oil had spilled out on the ground. Well, finding the bottle half empty, he came back to his mother crying, "Oh, I lost half the oil, I lost half the oil." And he was very unhappy. Well, the mother sent another son with another bottle and another 10-rupee note. And he also had the bottle filled. And while returning, he fell down and dropped. And again, half the oil spills out. And picking up the bottle, he came back to his mother very happy. And he says, "Oh, look, I saved half the oil. The bottle fell down. It could have broken. The oil started spilling out, and all of it might have been lost. But I saved half of it." And both came to the mother in the same position. They had a bottle that was half empty, half full. One was crying for the empty half, and one was happy with the filled part. So you've got pessimism, and you've got optimism. Well, then the mother sent another son with another bottle and another 10-rupee note. She's probably getting pretty tired of handing out these 10-rupee notes by then. Well, also, he fell down while returning. There must be a slick spot in the road somewhere. But anyway, he falls down, drops the bottle, and half the oil spills out. And he picks up the bottle. And like the second boy, he comes to his mother very happy. He says, "Mother, I saved half the oil." But this boy was a Vipassana boy. He was full not only of optimism, but he also had realism. He understood. Well, half the oil was saved, but half was also lost. So he says to his mother, "Now I shall go to the market, work hard for the whole day, earn 5 rupees, and get this bottle filled. By evening, I will have it filled." That is Vipassana. That is the art of living. No pessimism. Instead, optimism, realism, workism. So, that's S.N. Goenka, all about this bottle of oil. So one son saw it half empty, right? One sun sees it half full, and one sun recognizes both. Kind of a little more middle path, wouldn't you think? So whenever you're faced with a situation or experience, your body-mind goes through kind of four processes of let's say, experiencing the situation. Your consciousness, your perception, your sensation, and your reaction. So consciously, you fell down and you spilled the oil. Your perception, half full, half empty, both. Your sensation, sad, guilty, shamed, happy, ecstatic, or maybe realistic. So there's examples of each of these in the parable, because their reactions, of course, were different, right? One cries, one laughs, one goes to work. Their consciousness received input the moment that each of the boys experienced that bottle slipping from their grip, landing on the ground, and the oil spilling out. Right? All their senses are like picking up all this information. And picking up their bottles, all three of them had a half-full bottle. But their perception differed, even though that reality was the same. One labeled it, hey, it's half empty. One said, no, mine was half full. And the last said, well, I got a half full and a half empty bottle. Their sensations, or we could call them emotions, they differed. The first seemed shamed and lamented on his half-empty bottle. Kind of that poor, pitiful me, so sorry, Mom. The second seemed relieved that his bottle was still half full. Well, hey, at least I didn't spill all of it, Mom. So, can you cut me some slack here? The third, though, was happy to have saved half the oil, but he didn't let that emotional phenomena influence the choice of action that he made. The first two just left it as it was. Right? Here, Mom, here's half the oil that you asked for. But the third one chose to take the needed appropriate action. First two boys' reactions are grounded in emotion, shame, and relief. The other boy was happy to have saved half the oil, but responded based on the reality of the situation. So two let their emotions dictate their actions, and one of them let his more wise response dictate his action. So the third boy chose to set aside pessimism. He decided to be a little more optimistic and accept the reality of his mistake and then engage in workism to correct it. But let's give the second kid credit, right? That said, hey, mine's half full. He's kind of an optimist too, right? Basically the whole, hey, it could have been worse frame of mind. Well, this idea, it should serve us each as a mapped path for all of us Buddhist practitioners. Unwholesome things will happen. You will at some point spill your oil. So you have to train yourself so that your conscious body-mind will take a clear, appropriate view of the experience in that moment. Then, to set aside any initial perceptions so that negative or positive labels don't cloud the reality of the situation. Don't allow the sensations or emotional context brought on by that to evaluate or to determine how you're going to act. Do not allow perception and sensation to fall away, though, so that conscious reality can be viewed through the lens of practice and appropriate action. So you can take whatever action is needed based on the actual need, the actual moment, the situation. Now, Master Goenka ends the parable with, this is Vipassana. And that is so true. But for a Buddhist, no matter the tradition, This is how we should practice. Now, this is a very short talk today, but I have your talk scheduled up through May, and then suddenly this coronavirus pandemic hit us. No clue that was going to happen, right? This is the kind of situation that Master Goenka is trying to remind us of, that we're going to go through life from birth to death, and things are going to happen that are going to stop us in our tracks. We're going to be like, what the heck just happened? I mean, look what's going on in the world right now. And when this started going on, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to change the talks because I need to make them more appropriate for you guys, of ways that you can practice during this tumultuous time that we're going through right now. But then the next thing came to me. Shouldn't every lesson have some way to connect it to what's going on in the moment? If our Buddhist practice is going to be relevant and it's going to have value, then it shouldn't matter what talk I have chosen. Within that talk, there should be a lesson for us in dealing with our coronavirus pandemic situation. Well, hey, right here there is. So I said we're going to talk about pessimism, optimism, realism, and workism. Right? That's what that whole parable was about. Well, in the midst of this pandemic that we're dealing with, think about the people that are pessimistic. Maybe you are. Pessimism at this point is kind of an unwholesome reactivity. It's kind of a habit or a disposition that we might have that has no value. If you're approaching what we're dealing with across this entire planet right now, if you're dealing with it from a point of pessimism, you're going to have a really rough time dealing with this. Because all you're going to see is the negative. All you're going to see is the suffering. All you're going to see is the death, the illness, the discontent, the anguish. That's all you're going to see. Now, I want you to take a moment and think about that. Think about what your life will be like if you approach this with a pessimistic attitude. I'm going to give you a moment. All right. Now let's think about optimism. Hey, optimism's a good thing. I'm certainly not going to diss optimism at all. But positive in nature, as optimism is, it can arise from delusion, from ignorance, or misinformation if we're not careful. Optimism that arises from reality and from knowledge and from experience, that's a good thing. That's good optimism. But optimism that arises because we're getting misinformation, or we're not getting any information at all, or maybe we're just deluding ourselves that, like a certain person says, oh man, this will be gone in 2 weeks. And I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about. So we have to, if we find ourselves becoming optimistic, we have to think, why is optimism arising in me? What is making me optimistic about this? Well, it may be just this. As a Buddhist, the one thing we can be absolutely sure of is this: it will pass. Or, if you prefer, it is not permanent. Just like any other phenomena, it's going to come, it's going to mess with us, it's going to make life suck for a while, then it will go away. Now, what it does to our societies, once it does go away, that we don't know yet. But we can be optimistic about that too, because we've come back from other stuff, right? As a world. And I'm not talking about just as a nation or a people or all that. I'm talking about the world here. So, find a trusted source. So you can have that real optimism, at least based on, I know this eventually has to end. Because it's very important for us. Because if we get stuck in pessimism with the idea maybe of, oh, this is just going to go on forever and I don't know what I'm going to do, it's going to be very hard again for you to deal with it. And I don't want you to have that difficult of a time. Why? Because this is going to be difficult enough without facing it with a pessimistic attitude. And by the way, is that going to be easy? No. This is not a good thing going on. So maybe a little pessimism might start to arise in you. When it does, check yourself, okay? Or at least remind yourself of impermanence. That'll help. Well, then there's realism. We have the Eightfold Path in Buddhism, right? Part of the Four Noble Truths. And in the Eightfold Path, of course, there's view and there's intent. And this is how we can work at getting a realistic view, right? So you want an appropriate view. Again, you don't want it to come from delusion or ignorance or misinformation, right? So appropriate view, and then you couple that with appropriate intent. Let's say the intent of, I want to get through this situation with the least amount of discontent and anguish and suffering as I can, and I'd like to help others do the same. That's my goal, right? That's a pretty realistic goal. So you want to be realistic about it. Look, you might be eating some pretty strange meals if you start to run out of stuff, can't get to the store right away. Hey, that's just realistic, right? If what you have in the house is what you have in the house, then make something interesting out of it if you have to. You know, you have to be realistic that, I'll give you an example. Mary, my lady, her father is alone now that his wife died in December, and Mary really wants to go out there and help him. He lives about an hour and a half away or so. And she really wants to go help him. I want to go help him. But realistically, we can't go help him. Because we may have been exposed to the virus, and we don't want to expose him to the virus. So appropriate view of our situation and his situation, an appropriate intent of, we would love to go help him, but the realistic intent must be, we can't right now. Can we talk to him on Skype and help guide him through how to cook his breakfast? Sure. Can we get on Skype and guide him through how to use the laundry? Sure. That's realistic. You may find yourself in similar situations with your parents or your children or whatever it may be. And then the last is workism. So, you've heard of pessimism and optimism and realism. I like that Master Goenka threw in workism, because we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to put in a lot of effort in the coming months. It's just how it's going to be. So we want to take appropriate actions. And we can only take appropriate actions, again, if we're not dealing from a position of delusion or ignorance or misinformation. Right? We're not being pessimistic about it, because that's going to get us nowhere. So we need to find those appropriate actions we can take. Like, if you have extras, you offer some to someone, right? You say, look, man, I got a lot of extra stuff, and I want other people to have what they need, right? That's a wonderful thing to do. So the appropriate action is to offer. The appropriate action on the other side can go one of two ways. Wow, thank you very much. I really need this, right? This will really help out me and my family. Thank you so much. But another reply that may be a realistic reply is, we're doing fine right now, and we don't really need anything. So could you pass that on to someone who does? That's appropriate action. Sincerely grateful for the offer, and sincerely grateful that may be handed on to someone who needs it more than you do. This is how our Buddhist practice is going to help us get through this time. And I know that each of you out there have families and yourselves to be concerned about. You've got friends to be concerned about. And you've got the whole world to be concerned about. So we want to go at it in a way that we can do the most good for the most people, beginning with ourselves, our family, and our friends. And our pets, right? Call it our tribe, if you will. So, I know that we're going to get hit with a lot of negative stuff, say, in the next month, month and a half. I mean, let's just face it. Let's be realistic. People are going to die. People are going to get sick. People are going to suffer. But we want to try to avoid that pessimistic attitude because that's just going to lock you down somewhere and you're going to feel like you're powerless. You are not powerless. So, a little optimism, right? Look, I've got some skills. I have some knowledge. I have some practice. I think with that and all my friends and family helping and all that, I can get through this. As long as I look at it realistically. As long as I don't blind myself to, let's call it, the dangers, both to myself, my family, and others. So realistically, I know there are certain things that I have to do whether I want to do them or not. Or there's certain things I can't do whether I want to do them or not. So then workism, for us in our Buddhist practice, is we want to work at that practice every moment. We want to think about our view of things. We want to think about our intent. We want to, when it comes to livelihood, if you have an essential job, please go do it. But we understand that you're going to be afraid of catching the virus, right? Afraid of catching coronavirus because you work at an essential job. Well, we're there for you, right? If we can help, let us know. That's the idea. If you don't have an essential job and you're told, hey, why don't you hang around at home, watch some Netflix, maybe do some house repair or whatever, right? But please don't be out unless you need to be, then please do that. Because that's a realistic way to handle this problem, and that's the workism part. So as we go through this time, we're going to take each lesson, and at the end, we're going to talk about how that relates to this coronavirus pandemic and what we have to do and need to do in order to get through it. Because I've sat with most of you folks for quite a while now, and I know your strengths, and I know you have weaknesses, but let's work with the strengths that we have. Let's work with the knowledge and the practice and the wisdom that you've gained over these years of learning and practicing. All right, questions, comments?